Have you ever stopped to think about what might be hiding in your own words? Well, today we're going to dive into a really mind-bending philosophical question, how the very way we talk might be secretly committing us to believing certain things exist. It's a wild journey into logic, language, and, well, reality itself.
All right, so let's just jump right in with a big question. Think about it. Do numbers really exist? Or what about something like justice, or even the color red? I mean, sure, we talk about them all the time, right? The number 7 is prime. We want justice. But do they exist in the same way that, say, this chair I'm sitting on exists? What does it even mean for something like that to be real? This is the exact kind of puzzle that, yeah, keeps philosophers up at night.
See, here's the thing. We all walk around with beliefs about how the world works, even if we don't think of them as these big theories. But philosophers? Well, they love to look under the hood. They're asking, okay, if your beliefs are true, what else are you committed to? What things absolutely have to exist for your whole worldview to even make sense? And that, right there, is the core of ontology, the philosophical study of what it means to be. So, to get a handle on a question that huge, you're going to need the right tools. And philosophers have a pretty specific toolkit for this job, designed to unpack the link between what we say and what's actually out there. It all comes down to being super precise.
Okay, so the two main tools in this kit are something called formal languages and the idea of ontological commitment. You can think of it like this. The formal language is the super precise instrument, and ontological commitment is what we're trying to measure. One helps us analyze our beliefs with incredible precision, and the other is what those beliefs actually assume is real. Let's break them down, starting with the commitment part.
So, ontological commitment, I love this analogy. It's basically the fine print of your beliefs. If you say something simple like, some dogs are friendly, you're not just making a claim about friendliness. You are, without even thinking about it, committed to the idea that dogs exist. It's the whole set of things that your worldview absolutely needs to be true for it to work at all.
Okay, so how in the world do you read that fine print? That's exactly where formal languages come into play. I mean, let's face it, our everyday language is kind of messy and ambiguous. A formal language, though, is like a truth microscope. It strips away all that fuzziness and lets us see the pure, underlying logical skeleton of a sentence. It's the tool that lets us see those commitments crystal clear.
All right, so this is where it all comes together. How do we actually use these tools? How do we take the precision of formal languages to drag those hidden ontological commitments out into the light? Well, this brings us to a really famous, super influential method developed by the philosopher W.V.O. Quine.
Quine basically said, hey, we can make a test for this, a systematic method, a way to take any statement you believe, shove it under that logical microscope, and basically force it to fess up to exactly what it assumes exists in the world. And his test? It's actually a beautifully simple 3-step process. Step 1, just say what you believe, in plain English. Step 2, translate that sentence into the super precise language of logic, what he called canonical notation. And then, step 3, you just look at that logical sentence and see what things have to exist for it to be true. That's it. That's where you find the hidden confession.
Okay, so let's actually try this out. This is where it gets really cool. We'll start with the belief that sounds completely obvious, totally uncontroversial. Something like, there is a number between 6 and 8. Easy enough, right? Nothing tricky there, or is there?
Now for step 2, the translation. Yeah, I know, that string of symbols on the screen looks a little intimidating, but trust me, it's just a perfectly clean, precise way of saying the exact same thing we just said in English. It basically reads like this. There exists something, we'll call it x, such that x is a number, and x is bigger than 6, and x is smaller than 8. See? No wiggle room, no ambiguity. Just pure logic. And now, step 3, the big reveal. The absolute key is that very first bit of code, that exist. In logic, that's called the existential quantifier, and its meaning isn't fuzzy at all. It literally means there exists an object X such that the moment you write that symbol, you are making a claim that something exists. And that, right there, is the genius of Quine's idea. For that logical sentence to be true, our variable X has to stand in for something real. It needs to have an object as its value. And in our example, what's that object? Well, it's a number, specifically the number 7. So, boom.
According to Quine, if you believe that simple little sentence, there is a number between 6 and 8, then you are officially ontologically committed to the idea that numbers are real, existing objects.
Okay, but of course, in philosophy, it's never quite that simple. As neat and tidy as Quine's method seems, it is far from the final word on the matter. In fact, it pretty much kicked off a huge philosophical brawl that's still going on today. Yeah, a whole lot of other philosophers started pushing back, saying, whoa, hold on a minute. They started to question if translating our sentences into this one specific kind of formal logic is really the ultimate test for existence. I mean, is the secret to all of reality really hidden in the rules for a symbol like there exists?
So the objections pretty much split into two main camps. Camp 1 says, okay, fine, let's use formal logic, but maybe those there exists symbols, the quantifiers, don't have to mean what Quine says they mean. Then you've got Camp 2, and they're basically saying, why are we doing all this complicated translation in the first place? We should be able to figure this out just using regular old English.
Let's dig into that first objection because it's a pretty clever workaround. It's called substitutional semantics. And the idea is, what if a statement like that can be true without having to point to a real object out there in the world? What if it's true just because we can substitute a term, like a word or numeral, for the variable and get a true sentence? So look at how this totally changes the game. From this point of view, our sentence, there exists an x such that x is a number, is true. Why? Because we can swap in the term 7 for x and get a new sentence, 7 is a number, which is true. See what happened? We just agreed the original statement was true without ever having to say that some abstract metaphysical object called the number 7 is floating around in reality. It's a brilliant way to talk about numbers without being ontologically committed to them. All right, I know we've been deep in the weeds of logic and philosophy here, so let's pull back. What's the bottom line? What are you supposed to take away from this whole debate? Why does any of this philosophical language game actually matter in the real world?
Well, here it is. The big takeaway is that the language we use every single day, it isn't neutral. It's packed with hidden assumptions about what's real and what isn't. We've seen how a powerful tool like formal logic can work like a microscope, bringing those assumptions into sharp focus. But we also saw it's not a done deal. The whole debate proves that the true link between language, truth, and reality is still one of philosophy's great unsolved mysteries. And maybe that's the most important point of all. How we talk about the world might actually be shaping the world we believe we're living in.
So I'll just leave you with this final thought to chew on. If our language really does contain a hidden blueprint for reality, who drew it?